Iowa beats Illinois 15-13. This was quite the game. It looked like Illinois had it. The fourth quarter just kind of belonged to Iowa. The percentage thing, I looked on ESPN. It was one of those situations where Illinois, I mean, it wasn't all the way at the top, but it was really, really high up there, and then it just kind of skyrocketed down about, I forget what part of the fourth quarter, but in the fourth quarter, it did that. Sonny, you're a resident Illinois fan. What are your thoughts on this one?
As an Illinois fan, I'm kind of reacting oppositely as a lot of other Illini fans who, I get that I think we, gave the game away. And from a broad season perspective, we're now, I think, 1-4, 1-4 against the Big Ten West, which is just, obviously arguably the worst division in college football history.
Yes.
But I'm kind of looking at it from a little more micro level. Basically, when we hired Brett Bielema, I asked for one thing. I wanted us to reach a level of a Wisconsin, Iowa, that sort of tier, so that we could be competing for the Big Ten West Championship year in and year out. And then once that became consistent, we can kind of move on and see if there was a step after that. We went toe-to-toe with Iowa, a team that's now 9-2, could potentially finish the season 10-2. And essentially it came down to, an Iowa play. What Iowa does all the time. The game was in Kinnick Stadium, and by the time the game ended, it was at night. And Iowa's got a crazy good history at Kinnick Stadium at night.
Yep.
I think Illinois did really well for themselves. I think the difference was essentially they got outcoached in the fourth quarter. There's certainly some questions I have for Brett that I think even he wishes he could do over again. But I'm not down on the loss. Again, it was 15-13. I was on, again, we keep plugging Mark here, but I was on the Iowa show, and I did, basically I've done 2 Iowa preview shows last week. And the comments afterwards, just me saying that I thought the game would be close. Like, I was being ridiculed. It was just one of those, come on.
Can't read the comments on there.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things because a lot of people have a perception of Illinois because we started off the season so poorly, and the 2 primetime games, Penn State and Nebraska, we look like we could be the worst team in the Big Ten. That not a lot of people have seen the kind of turnaround that the Illini have had over the past 5 weeks. And so I thought the game would be close. I was nervous through, even in the fourth. I was waiting for that one Iowa play to happen. And, when we had 2 defensive pass penalties on that drive, which they inevitably scored on, you can't do that against Iowa. I was waiting for that. When you give them free yardage like that, they're going to capitalize. That's why they are who they are. Congrats to them. They're now the forever Big Ten West champions, and they're, in my opinion, clearly the best team in the Big Ten West. But I think, quite honestly, that they would have finished 3rd or 4th in last year's Big Ten West division.
It's interesting. What do you think, Justin?
This game, well, originally I was pissed off because this took away Nebraska's opportunity to win the Big Ten West, but it didn't matter. So at the end of the day, because we can't take care of business, we'll get into that next. But overall, just kind of what he said, it just that meltdown on the last drive. And what was it, a 30-yard run there to the right-hand side? And at that point, you just knew that I was going to win that game. It's just that's what they do. That team follows a structure and they don't deviate from their game plan no matter what, and they don't beat themselves. It's no matter how much their back's against the wall, they keep running their offense the same way and they get it done. I don't know how. They're the worst good team ever. They remind me of the Minnesota Vikings last year. But I mean, credit to them. They find a way. Illinois has been better. And I mean, albeit weren't bad in this game. Iowa does make teams look bad. And so I don't think Illinois played a bad game at all. Again, they put themselves in an opportunity to beat the team that is now probably going to be the Big Ten West champion. And it was a really good game, but like I said, the ending didn't do me any favors. So I felt bad for Sonny. I will say that. Me and him were texting. I felt bad for Sonny. So pour one out for Sonny.
Well, I think Iowa, I think we've seen the progression of Deacon Hill, and it's not the progression that is like sexy, right?
Yeah.
If you see like Kyle McCord's progression this year from Indiana to Minnesota this last game, you've seen it better. We'll talk about that later on. But quarterbacks like that, they're in a much more high powered offense, so it looks better.
Yeah.
But Deacon Hill, like, no interceptions. He got a touchdown pass in this game. You still want him to work on the sacks. You can't get sacked 4 times, but that's also on the offensive line too. That's not all on Deacon Hill. So you're seeing this offense progress further and further and get better. Funny enough, after Brian Ferentz has now been fired, which he's still coaching, even though he's fired.
Yeah.
Which,
Weird.
that's a whole nother
awkward.
Yeah, it's like, what else will Iowa's offense do to surprise us? Yeah,
right.
But I think I think the story of this game is exactly what you guys are saying. Like, Iowa is one of those teams that I just feel like they are built for the Big Ten West. Everything about them, everything about their coaching, they are built for the Big Ten West because they know that they have similar, if not a slightly better talent than most other teams in the West. And they say, look, if we can just play our game the way we're supposed to play it, don't make mistakes, don't beat yourselves, right? Play solid special teams, play the field position game. If we can do that, then we're going to win these games. And unfortunately, Illinois was just I guess I'm not saying unfortunately, I don't really interest in this game, but unfortunately for Sonny, I'll say that. Illinois just happened to be the most recent victim of that. I mean, you even look at the Minnesota game, which I know we can get controversial about that. I think both teams played really well in that game, so I'm not saying one deserved more than the other. But Iowa, if the call wasn't the way it was called, they would have won that game by them doing what they have done all season long. Solid special teams, work off the big plays, get the ball in your playmaker hand to do what needs to happen, and make it work. So I will say about Illinois, though, John Paddock, I think he might be better than Luke Altmaier.
I think so too.
And I don't know if that's because he's more skilled, but I think there is just a veteran presence to him that makes him better. Sonny, you have any thoughts on that?
I trust Sonny's opinion over mine. He watches them every week.
I mean, Brett's already said he's going to start the rest of the season. I think it just comes down to almost confidence right now. Like, you saw what Paddock's weaknesses were. I mean, I thought he played just fine considering he played Iowa's defense, but he's small. How many of these passes got batted down at the line of scrimmage? His strengths are obviously he releases that ball really quick and like quick enough where even the best of defenses can't react sometimes. So, I mean, ultimately, I think Luke's ceiling is considerably higher. I think Paddock is just on like fire right now, and he's just feeling one of those heater moments. And I agree with Brett in starting him yesterday, and I agree with him just to carry it through next week to Northwestern because this bowl game is so important. But I'm also at the same time very content and confident in Luke Altmaier being our quarterback moving forward.
Yeah. And before we move on, another note of Iowa that we didn't mention, Cooper DeJean, being out didn't seem to impact them too much. Impacted them on special teams more than anything, but that's another thing. Credit to them battling through injuries and being able to still continue to do what they do. So,
yeah, I would say the only thing that impacted them, I think, was that John Paddock seemed to be more confident throwing to some of the wide receivers on the outside than maybe some other quarterbacks have been. Now, don't get me wrong. The cornerbacks still did well. I think both quarterbacks still had like less than 50% reception percentage per target or something like that, whatever it is on PFF. So they still played well, but like he had the confidence to throw that way. And that's a big thing with Cooper DeJean is like, not a lot of quarterbacks have the confidence to make that throw because they're like, Cooper DeJean is going to make some kind of big play here. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see going forward how Iowa can do that.